Mismor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binote sheyarbitzeni, al me menuchot yanachaleni, nafshi shovev, yanacheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki helech begitz al mavet, lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorirai di shanta v'shemen roshi kosir vaya ach tov chesed yirdifuni kol yamei chayai v'shaviti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Friends, I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. On these difficult days when we are seeking comfort and solace, we often turn to the psalmist. And so I ask you now to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember Judith Bass. To her children, Bob, Kathy, and Dan, and also to Annette, Pat, and Linda, to her sister Doris and her sister-in-law Dorothy, and to her wonderful grandchildren, to Alicia, Emily, Tim, Jake, Joe, Erica, Lauren, and Tristan, and to all the members of the family, and to so many dear friends who are here with us today, and to those friends who could not join us today. We all have gathered here to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Judy. Our sages have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then, perhaps, to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Judy's journey began in 1927. She was the youngest of 3 daughters born to Louis and Essie Goldsmith. Judy and her sisters, Doris, who is here with us today, and also Gertie of blessed memory. The 3 girls grew up in Cleveland's Glenville neighborhood on Berkshire Road. And Doris, you shared with me yesterday some very sweet memories of your family's home, a 3-family home where you and your parents and your sisters lived on the 1st floor. Your grandparents, the Zuckermans, lived on the 2nd floor. And the 3rd floor was reserved for any member of the extended family who may have been down on their luck or out of work and needed a place to live rent-free. It seems that your parents taught you, Judy and Gertie, the importance of charity and tikkun olam, repairing our broken world, from a very early age. And Judy's earliest years, as we know, coincided with some of the most challenging years in our nation's history. But fortunately, though, the Goldsmith family fared well. During the Depression years, their father, Louis, was an advertising manager of the Jewish Independent, the newspaper which preceded today's Cleveland Jewish News. Doris, you told me that you and your sister had fond memories. Saturday mornings with your dad, he would take you to his office. He'd let the 2 of you play around on the typewriters. And then he would always take his girls out for lunch. You said it was usually Chinese food. And because of his salaried position, your parents were able to provide things for you and for your sisters that were not common of this particular era. You see, Judy's dad drove a car. He'd often pick his daughters up from school, especially if it was a rainy day. And there was also the wonderful home on Berkshire. Growing up with grandparents living just 1 floor above you, that was a special bonus for Judy and for her sisters. Doris, you remembered your grandparents who observed their Jewishness in a very special way. They were Orthodox. They observed the laws and the customs, and you and your sisters would cherish the Fridays that you could spend with your grandmother watching her braid the challah for Shabbat. The Goldsmith girls were blessed to have grown up in a home that was warm and welcoming, a home that was loving, and a childhood that you described to me, Doris, as happy-go-lucky. Doris, you also described your sister Judy to me in this way, and I'm quoting you, Doris. You said that she was the most unassuming, generous person on the earth. She was a real lady. I admired her always, even though she was a little bit younger than you. In a way, you looked up to her at times. And Doris, you said that she always thought of the other person first, never herself. That's just how she was. Judy attended Patrick Henry Junior High School. She graduated from Glenville High School, where she was an excellent student. She was active in many school theatrical productions, where she usually landed the starring role. And she was also selected as Glenville's prom queen in her senior year. While at Patrick Henry, Judy met Marvin Dorfman, an outgoing and fun young man who was about a year older than her. When they both were at Glenville, they began dating, and this courtship soon turned into a romance that lasted for more than 4 decades. Following her high school graduation, Judy went on to study at Floristone Mather College for 2 years. And Judy and Marv were married by Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver in 1950. When I asked Judy's children, what did your parents enjoy doing together? Without missing a beat, they exclaimed, everything. And after listening to them tell me about their parents as a couple, it seems they did enjoy doing everything together. From the Temple's Mr. and Mrs. Club, where Marv would usually be on stage and Judy would always be helping behind the scenes, to the Shaker Heights Indoor Theater play reading group. I'm not supposed to tell you what that stands for, but those of you who are in that group know. But they loved this group. They'd get together at different folks' homes and read through plays. And Marv and Judy loved to dance together, and they bowled together, and they traveled together. They traveled the world, visiting so many places, including Israel and Greece, Italy, France, Spain, and England. But I think what Judy and Marv enjoyed doing most together was building their family together. Bob and Kathy and Dan, I know that you have the sweetest memories of a mom who was, in your words, the epitome of a mom. And also, as you said, the ultimate nurturer. These are the sweetest memories that you will take with you. You recalled that in a time when kids in elementary school would always walk home for lunch before returning to school, she was always there for you when you came home for lunch. And she always made it a point, whether you liked it or not, at the end of each school year, to invite your elementary school teachers over for lunch. Sometimes fun, sometimes maybe a little awkward, but this was something she did. She was involved in the PTA, and oftentimes she was, for your classroom, the room mother. And when the three of you would come home after a long day at school, she would always have cookies and cake on the counter, always waiting for you. She was quite the baker. Your mom was what we would call in Yiddish a balabust, basically the ultimate homemaker, or a homemaker of the highest caliber. Your refrigerator was always full, and the house was kept so beautifully. Everything had its place. She was very organized. Your mom had lists, and her lists had lists. Mom loved to entertain, having friends and family over, speaking with her children and also her grandchildren. I learned that her banana cake with chocolate frosting, and her apple pie, and her orange jello, and her homemade chopped liver, and her lamb chops, and I'm sure the list goes on, but these were famous. It's not surprising that some members of the family lovingly called Judy the feeder. And Dan, when you would join your friend whose family had a house in Chautauqua, when you would go up there for visits certain times of the year, each time you traveled, your mom would make sure to give you one of her delicious banana cakes. The first trip you couldn't take anymore, when you crossed the PA line, you and your buddy dug into the cake. And that became the tradition. Every time you crossed the PA line, that's when you and your friend would start consuming that banana cake. Kathy and Bob and Dan, there were those wonderful family vacations, Cape Cod and Williamsburg, Cooperstown. There were a couple strange hotel stories that went along with those trips, but these were wonderful memories as well. And also, some of the best times were maybe some of the simplest times, the way your mom supported you, whether you were involved with Cub Scouts or perhaps your music lessons, Little League, whatever it was, she was there for you. And throughout your entire life, your young adulthood life till present, her support was always 110%. Her children will always remember a mom who was never in a bad mood, who was always upbeat, and someone who had a delightful sense of humor. You knew that your parents were a great team. They were quite a match. You might say even a perfect pair. When the three of you went on to junior high school and high school, your mom went to work in your dad's office, in the optometry office, as his office manager. And no matter where they were, certainly when they were out in public, it seems that your mom, who had a great sense of humor, but your mom was always the straight man to your father's comedic side. Together they were, as we would say in the Jewish wedding ceremony, Re'im Ahuvim, loving partners. Marv's passing in 1991, when he was just 65 years old, left a tremendous void within Judy. They shared together 41 years of marriage, and quite a beautiful marriage. But somehow Judy found the strength to move forward and she found the strength to continue living her life. She went to work at White House Construction and also, after that, Zion Memorial Cemetery as their administrative assistant. She kept busy at the temple with the temple's Women Association. And of course, she remained so close to family and to friends and to her nieces and nephews. Judy looked forward to visits with Joan, Ann, and David in California. And here in Cleveland, she enjoyed sweet relationships with Phyllis and Barbara and Gary. I had a brief moment with Judy's grandchildren just before the service. When I asked them for any special memories or special stories about their grandmother, for a brief moment there was silence. And then one of the grandchildren, I think it might have been Joe, just blurted out, it was everything. She just did so many special little things, all of it. And they all agreed that this was a grandmother who just loved her grandchildren unconditionally. You knew she loved you. You felt the pride that she had in you. And everything she did throughout her day, she kept you in mind. She would do these wonderful little things. She was sometimes a protective grandmother, perhaps a little too protective, as she would remind you to always be wearing your coat, even in these hot days of summer. But everything that she did with you and everything she did for you was always done with love. Judy was fortunate to find a love and a very special friendship with her longtime friend, Stan Bass. Judy and Stan married in the late 1990s, and together they shared 18 years until his recent passing just last year. Judy was blessed with many great friends, and so many of these friendships we might describe as lifelong friendships, friends from high school and even elementary school. And I have to mention one of these lifelong friends who joins us today. Her friend Vivian Braun, who I know has traveled from Baltimore to be here, and they were friends since grade school. Through junior high and high school, I believe Vivian and Judy even went on their very first trip to New York City together. They traveled by train as seniors in high school, and they've remained friends through all these years. And that wasn't hard for Judy to do with any of her friends because, you see, she was a trusted and good friend. She was also generous, and she was generous to a fault. As her children, and also now her grandchildren, have reminded me, Judy was that person who would never, ever let anyone else pick up a tab. She would call ahead to talk to the manager. She would conspire with waiters, whispering behind the menu, thinking nobody else at the table knew what she was doing. Because of her check-grabbing skills, her beloved Marv called her the quickest hands in the West. But this was her way. You just better let her pay. She was an avid reader who was very interested in politics and what was going on in the world. And she loved her Cleveland sports teams. Judy also, it should be noted that she was also a breast cancer survivor. And in giving back to her community and continuing the idea of Tikkun Olam, she volunteered for Hope Lodge, serving and helping families who also were dealing with cancer. In her last month, aside from being surrounded by the people who loved her the most, she was doubly blessed to have 3 special women enter into her life. Her caretakers, Patricia, Stephanie, and Tatiana. How grateful Judy and the entire family is to have known these 3 angels. Judy was a devoted and loving wife for 41 years to Marv and for 18 years to Stanley. She was always a wonderful and loving mother and grandmother, a dear and cherished sister and daughter, and a friend to so many. Is it possible that Judy knew the poet Ralph Waldo Emerson? And is it possible that his words, his poetry describing what it means to be successful, is it possible he wrote these with Judy Dorfman Bass in mind? Emerson writes, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden path, or a redeemed social condition. To know that even one life has breathed easier because you lived. This is to have succeeded. We join with the sages of our people as we say, Zichron Livracha, may she always be remembered as a blessing. Amen. As you are able, I'd like to invite you to rise for our memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nuchana Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim Utorim, Ki Zohar Harakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Yakireinu, Shahalacha Leonama Began Eden, Tehe Menuchata, Ahana Baharachamim Astirecha, B'seter Gnafecha Leolamim, V'titrod b'troracha yimet nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata, b'tanuach b'shalom, al mishkava, v'nomar, Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence, among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear departed Judith Bass, who has gone now to her eternal home, may Judy's soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and grant that her memory inspire us to noble and consecrated living. Amen. Please be seated. Friends, our service of memory will continue at the Mayfield Cemetery. Following the interment, the family will receive friends at the residence of 22655 Chagrin Boulevard, the Stratton House. This is in Beechwood. Again, that address is 22655 Chagrin Boulevard in the reception room. Visitation will be following the burial until 8 p.m. this evening, and also tomorrow, Friday afternoon, from 12 until 4 p.m. Anyone who wishes to make a contribution in memory of Judy, the family has suggested that you might consider the Dr. Marvin A. Dorfman Low Vision Fund, care of the Cleveland Society for the Blind. On behalf of her family, we thank you all for being here on this sad but important day.